Have you ever sat across from someone you call a friend and felt drained? Like the energy in the room shifted the second they walked in. Maybe you couldn't explain it. Maybe you told yourself they were just going through something or that you were being too sensitive. But deep down, your gut was whispering something you refused to hear. This isn't friendship. This is corrosion disguised as connection. And yet you stayed. You ignored the signs. Because that's what we're taught to do, isn't it? Give people chances, forgive, be loyal. But what if I told you, loyalty to the wrong person is just self-betrayal in slow motion? We talk so much about red flags in relationships, but what about in friendships? The slow poison that doesn't come with screaming matches or dramatic breakups, but with silence, subtle manipulation, and smiling masks that hide something darker. The truth is, some of the most damaging wounds don't come from our enemies. They come from people we once laughed with, and the danger lies in how invisible those wounds can be until it's too late. Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that one friend who only reaches out when they need something? Maybe you don't think much of it at first. You're generous, you care. But soon it's a pattern. They call you when they're sad but disappear when you need support. They borrow your time, your energy, your presence, but rarely offer it in return. This isn't just bad behavior. It's parasitic, and yet we normalize it. Why? Because they've been around forever. Because you share memories. History doesn't justify toxicity. And here's the twist. People like this don't just take. They make you feel guilty for even noticing they're taking. That's manipulation in its most polished form. But that's just the beginning. We're not even close to the most dangerous traits yet. That's coming. And when we get there, you might be surprised by how many people in your life check those boxes. Toxic friendships don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper. Sarcasm that cuts too deep. Jokes that feel more like jabs. You laugh, but you shrink inside. You brush it off, but something aches. This is what I call weaponized humor. It's mockery wrapped in a smile. And if you confront it, they'll say you're too sensitive, that you can't take a joke. But here's the thing. Real friends don't joke about your insecurities. They protect them. They hold space for your pain. Anyone who laughs at your scars isn't trying to heal you, they're trying to hurt you without getting caught. Why is it that certain friends suddenly feel cold when you're winning? You share good news, a promotion, a relationship, a personal breakthrough, and instead of celebrating, they go quiet. Or worse, they find a way to turn the spotlight back on themselves. That's not love, that's competition. You think you're building a friendship, they're keeping score. And over time you'll feel yourself dimming your light, just to keep them comfortable in your shadow. And here's the wild part. These people often pretend to be your biggest supporters in public. They clap the loudest online, they post the birthday shoutouts, but in private it's different. There's a tension, a bitterness. You can feel it but can't name it. That's how emotional sabotage works. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just a look. A pause, a subtle shift in tone that says, "You're not allowed to grow past me." You start questioning your success. You second-guess your confidence. You feel guilty for being happy. That's not a friend. That's a mirror that only reflects back their own insecurity. But let's rewind for a second. Why do we tolerate this? Why do we keep these people in our lives long after they've stopped being good for us? The answer is simple and painful. Emotional familiarity. You see, when you've grown up surrounded by people who taught you that love comes with conditions, you start to believe that discomfort is normal, that real connection has to hurt a little. So when a toxic friend shows up with just enough kindness to keep you around, but just enough cruelty to keep you small, it feels familiar, like home. But not all homes are safe. Some are just prisons we've decorated with nostalgia. And if you're thinking, but what if I'm being dramatic? What if I'm imagining this pause right there? That doubt you feel, that hesitation to trust your own instincts. That's another toxic trait, gaslighting. A friend who constantly downplays your feelings, twists your words, or makes you feel crazy for bringing up a concern is not being honest. They're protecting their control. And here's the next open loop. How many of your close friends actually listen when you express how you feel? and how many make it about them? Hold on to that question, because in the second half of this video we're diving deeper into the traits even more dangerous than manipulation and jealousy. Traits that hide behind fake positivity, fake empathy, and even fake humility. Some of these may shock you, and some you might even recognize in yourself. Let this part settle in. The friends who truly care about you don't need to be told to be kind. They just are. They don't compete with you. They rise with you. They don't punish your honesty. They welcome it. But here's the hardest truth of all, and maybe the one you've been avoiding: some people only love you when you're not doing better than them. We're going to explore why it's so difficult to walk away, how to set boundaries that don't collapse the friendship entirely, and why being alone for a while might be the most healing thing you ever do. And we're also going to confront one final trait that most people never talk about. One that looks like loyalty, but is actually control. So, take a breath. Think about the faces that came to mind while watching this. The people you've made excuses for. The ones who leave you tired instead of inspired. And ask yourself, are they truly your friend? Or just someone who's mastered the art of keeping you close without ever truly supporting you? You might already know the answer. So you've taken that first uncomfortable look. You've started questioning the friendships you once defended without hesitation. That's not weakness, it's awakening. But here's the part. Most people never talk about the toxicity we tolerate in others. Often mirrors the chaos we've normalized within ourselves. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because if you've been conditioned to accept love that hurts, then you've probably confused pain with loyalty. And now the real work begins, recognizing the more subtle, insidious traits, the ones that don't shout but whisper until they rewrite the way you see yourself. Let's talk about emotional dumping, not sharing, not venting, dumping. There's a difference. A healthy friend comes to you with problems and allows space for a two-way conversation. A toxic one. They unload every crisis, every breakdown, every emotional storm, then vanish the second you need a lifeline. Over time, this imbalance builds resentment, but you'll feel too guilty to say anything because they need you, right? But needing someone and using them aren't the same thing. Ask yourself, do they seek your support or do they feed on your stability? And here's the twist. Some of the most toxic people wear the mask of the victim. Always misunderstood. Always in crisis. Nothing is ever their fault. It's their job's fault, their families, their exes. And guess what? It'll eventually be yours too. Because in their story, someone always has to be the villain. And if you stop playing the role of the rescuer, you'll suddenly find yourself cast as the enemy. The moment you set a boundary is the moment they accuse you of changing, of becoming selfish, of not being the friend you used to be. What if you never really were their friend? What if you were just their audience? Let that settle. Now let's peel back another layer. The friend who mirrors you until you outgrow them. At first, they love everything about you. They match your interests, your humor, your style. You feel close, connected. But the moment you start evolving, changing jobs, shifting values, pursuing growth, you notice a shift. Their tone changes. The energy gets weird. They call you too deep or say you've changed. And here's the thing. They don't dislike your growth. They fear being left behind by it. These people don't want connection. They want control. As long as you're the same predictable version of yourself, they're comfortable. But the moment you level up, you threaten their illusion of superiority or sameness. And they'll never admit that. Instead, they'll make subtle comments to pull you back. Like you've gotten really intense lately. Or, you used to be more fun. Translation. You're growing and they don't know how to keep up. But real friends don't guilt you for growing. They grow alongside you. Still with me, good. Because we're not done yet. Let's talk about passive sabotage. It doesn't always look like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like a friend who conveniently forgets to tell you about an opportunity. Who forgets to show up when it matters. Who makes plans but never follows through. And then when you finally bring it up, they act confused. They flip the script. Suddenly you're too sensitive, too demanding, too dramatic. And here's the kicker: they make you feel guilty for noticing that they let you down. This is a psychological tactic. They create the wound, then convince you it didn't happen. It's subtle gaslighting. And it keeps you in a loop of self-doubt, questioning your memory, your standards, even your worth. It's exhausting. And yet it works, because the pain is always just small enough to justify staying. Now let's crack open the most dangerous trait of all, the one most people never notice, until it's too late. The enabler disguised as a supporter. These friends are sneaky. They cheer you on, but only to a point. As long as your growth doesn't surpass theirs, they're in your corner. But the second you start making uncomfortable moves, healing, setting boundaries, saying no, walking away from dysfunction, they pull back. They say things like, "You're taking this too seriously," or "You used to be more chill." What they're really saying is, "I don't benefit from the new empowered version of you." See, growth threatens people who only felt close to you when you were broken, because now they have to meet you where you're going, not where you used to be. And if they refuse, you're not losing a friend. You're shedding a false layer of connection that only existed when you were in survival mode. You might be wondering now, what do I even do with all this? How do I start cutting ties without burning every bridge? Here's your answer. You don't owe anyone a dramatic exit. You don't need to send a long message explaining yourself. Start by withdrawing your energy. Stop over-explaining. Stop overextending. Let the silence speak. Toxic people hear boundaries as betrayal. That's not your problem. You're not responsible for how they react to your healing. What you are responsible for is your peace. If someone in your life consistently leaves you feeling small, drained, confused, or anxious, that's your nervous system asking you to pay attention. That's your intuition knocking. Don't ignore it this time. And here's something radical to consider. You don't need a reason to walk away. Not feeling safe is a valid reason. Not feeling seen is enough. You don't need to wait for the final betrayal or the perfect moment. You just need to choose you. And if you're afraid of being alone, understand this: loneliness with peace is better than company with chaos. One authentic connection is worth more than 100 shallow ones. When you clear out the noise, something incredible happens. Real people find you. People who don't need to compete, diminish, or manipulate you to feel whole. People who see you, who honor your energy, who don't punish you for having boundaries, emotions, dreams. But none of them can get to you until you stop protecting the ones who are only pretending to love you. So stop calling it love when it's really attachment. Stop calling it friendship when it's really survival. And stop betraying yourself to make someone else feel comfortable in their dysfunction. You don't need to explain your boundaries to people who were never planning to respect them anyway. This is your permission to let go. If this video made you uncomfortable, good. That means something inside you is waking up. Don't let it fall back asleep. And if you want more content like this, raw, unfiltered, brutally honest, subscribe. Not for me, for you. So that every time you almost forget your worth, you'll be reminded you were never too sensitive. You were just finally starting to pay attention, because the most dangerous trait a toxic friend can have is the one you refuse to see.